Deputy Kenny, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. As I'm sure the Minister is aware and the House is aware, we have a serious problem in the agricultural sector with regard to the huge amount of farmers out there are waiting to get their GLAS payments. The GLAS payments were due to be all paid, the first tranche of them, which is 85% of the payment, were supposed to be paid to them before the end of 2016, and most farmers expected that that was going to happen, and really they only started to flow in the last days of the month of December of last year. And since then, there has been quite a number of farmers who have received their payments, but there still, up until recently, was in excess of 10,000 farmers had not received their payments. I understand that is down now to approximately 6,500 farmers that haven't got their 85% payment. Now, there's all kinds of reasons and excuses been put forward by the department when people contact them, from technical hitches and difficulties with IT systems, and no excuse at all in many cases. But certainly the trend that I have found, and I know other deputies that have spoken in regard to this have found, is that when they make a representation on behalf of an individual client and give their herd number and their circumstances, somebody from the department comes back in a couple of days or a couple of weeks maybe and says, "We've got that resolved." But the farmer didn't have to do anything, which tells us that there's nothing on the side of the farmer that's causing this problem. Wherever the problem is, it's somewhere within the department. And it would be useful, I think, if the Minister would acknowledge, because it's really the blame has been placed on the shoes of the Minister and the department in this, would acknowledge that there is some issue with the IT system within the department that's causing this problem. Because what we seem to be finding here is that we've been told that if there is something comes up on the system that a farmer isn't going to be paid, they have to take out the physical application and an individual has to go through it line by line and examine it and see what's wrong. And in this day and age where you're talking about thousands of applications, it seems an absurd system that would happen. And what I would suggest, in fact what I would demand really on behalf of the many farmers out there who are left without these payments, is that the Minister should now pay all the money to all of the farmers, and if there are hitches with them, get them sorted out later on. There's still 15% of the payment can be, if there is some deduction or some penalty to be put in place, can be taken out of that at a later stage. So there's no reason to withhold this money from these farmers. Many of them are in dire straits. I have come across farmers who have had to sell some of their sheep to try and make ends meet, sheep that they need to keep on the land to meet the requirements of their GLAS payments. So, it is totally counterproductive for the department and the Minister to be sitting on their hands on this and not getting it sorted out. It's time these farmers were paid all of their money. They are in dire straits. There's a lot of them in debt. There's bank managers phoning them to see where they can get their next payment from, and they don't understand that somewhere in the department there's some technical hitch that won't let them get their money. So I would appeal to the Minister to, I know he will have an answer that has been written for him by somebody in the department as to what the excuse is going to be. But I think it's past time for excuses. It's time to make sure that we get these farmers paid all their money and all of their money within the next days, not weeks or months.
Thank you very much, Deputy, and well inside time. Minister,
thank you, Cathaoirleach. As I say, just before I read the script, 2 things. One is certainly nobody's sitting on their hands, and certainly I understand this scheme as good and better than anyone, because it was there as part of it when it was being designed. And one thing I will say is that if you broaden out a scheme to the level that GLAS was to try and encompass so many people, and you look at the options, and then you try to make sure that everybody is compliant, that inevitably led to some complications. But I will, just to reassure that there is nobody sitting on their hands, Cathaoirleach, and I welcome the opportunity to outline the current position regarding the 2016 payments under the Green Low Carbon Agri-Environment Scheme GLAS and the previous Agri-Environment Scheme, the Agri-Environment Options Scheme known as AOS. These agri-environment schemes have delivered important environmental benefits by supporting farmers to undertake actions that will enhance Ireland's agricultural sustainability credentials into the future. GLAS has a maximum annual payment of €5,000 under the general scheme, with a provision for payment of up to €7,000, known as GLAS Plus, where a farmer is required to give exceptional environmental commitments in a limited number of cases. Applications under the first 2 tranches of GLAS resulted in almost 38,000 farmers being approved into the scheme in its first year of implementation, which represented an unprecedented level of interest in the first year of any agri-environment scheme. A further just under 14,000 applications were received under GLAS 3 in the middle of December of last. Approvals have now issued in respect of over 90% of these applications, with the remaining applications currently being examined by the Department with a view to issuing further approvals where appropriate. This will bring the overall participation in GLAS levels of GLAS to well over the targeted participation of 50,000 farmers. In relation to the 2016 payments under AOS, the previous Agri-Environment Scheme, just over 8,600 participants were due a payment. AOS 2 participants completed their 5-year contract on the 31st of December 2016, and under EU regulations governing this scheme and all other area-based payment schemes, a full and thorough check, including cross-checks with the Land Parcel Identification System, must take place before the final payment can issue. As all AOS 2 participants will be receiving their final payments under the scheme, rechecks on payments made for all scheme years must be completed before final payment can be processed. This is the same procedure as was applied to AOS 1 participants finishing in that scheme. To date, AOS 2016 payments amounting to over 21 million have issued. The remaining 2,000 cases are currently being checked, and payments will continue to issue on an ongoing weekly basis as these cases are cleared. 2016 payments represent the first full year of payment under GLAS. At the end of December, there were approximately 37,500 active participants in the GLAS scheme, of which 27,400 received payments valued at over 97 million, which did represent 85% at the time. Payment can only issue where all required validation checks have been successfully passed. As issues with outstanding GLAS cases are resolved, they are being paid on a weekly payment runs. Further payments are issuing on a weekly basis, with payments valued at over 110 million now issued, and over 84% of participants now paid. There are approximately 5,900 cases awaiting payment. Further payments are issuing on a weekly basis. GLAS has a range, as I outlined at the start, of over 30 actions available for selection by participants, and each must be verified under EU regulations. As a result, there are a number of different reasons why payment may not have issued. Many of these issues, given their complexity, require review on a case-by-case basis. In cases where it has been identified that additional information is required from the farmer, this information is being requested. The Minister and the Department are all well aware of the need to process all 2016 payments without delay, and are ensuring that all resources required both on the IT and administrative side are directed towards resolving the outstanding queries on these cases.
Thank you, Deputy. You 2 minutes.
Well, Minister, while I'm conscious, and all of us are conscious, that payment can only be issued where all required validation checks have been successfully passed. Now, that's, to my mind, the 100% of the payment. And the issue here is that what these farmers are waiting for is the first tranche, that 85%. And I cannot understand, nor can the farmers out there understand why they cannot receive that 85%. And if there is an issue with checks or whatever, that can then be dealt with on the 15% remaining. There's no need to hold up these farmers' money in this particular case. And, while I understand that the Department has a job to do, and we're under scrutiny from the EU, and we have all these hurdles to jump, at the end of the day, it's the farmers' money. They entered into a contract with the government to get it. And under that contract, there was a time set on it as to when they would receive their money, and the government is in breach of that contract. So I would appeal to the Minister, to not just tell us that you have to do more checks and validation, and each one has to be checked, and farmers will have to come back with further information. As I say, in the vast majority of cases, the farmer has nothing further to do. All that seems to be done is just run a check through by the department, and when they get time to do it, they get to you and they pay the money. Pay the money now and do the checks later, and in the odd case that there may be an issue, it can be taken out of the 15%. And apart from that 15%, the reality is the department have all the cards when it comes to this situation, because they have all the other schemes that they hold on to as well, and they can be cross-compliant with all of them. So there is no reason why the GLAS money cannot be paid, and paid immediately, because that's what farmers need. And I understand that the Minister is farming himself, and he knows the situation that many people in the farming community are in, where they are in debt to try and get these situations resolved. And if they are in debt and there's pressure being put on them, and the Department is holding up money for them, the government needs to act, and act now, to pay that money to the farmers. Thank you
very much, Deputy, for your cooperation. Minister, final 2 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Well, would that be the case that you can just pay it under EU regulations? You can't. It is, in the first instance, 54% approximately of the payment is EU Rural Development Fund money. I would make the point that there are 6 schemes currently being paid under the Rural Development Programme: GLAS A and C, Beef Genomic Data and Genomics Programme, Sheep Welfare, TAMS, Knowledge Transfers, with locally led environment schemes to come across 12 regional offices. If you look at the GLAS itself, to try and accommodate as many people as possible, Tier 1, 2 and 3 and the various options, there have been, to broaden out the appeal of it and try and get as many people involved as possible. It was designed in a way to accommodate that. But the minute you do that, the minute you de-simplify it, you actually create a problem. Now, I would point out that Ireland is second only to Finland in terms of the speed at which it makes its payments. And I would be surprised if Finland, I can't say this definitively, has as many schemes and as range a complicated number of schemes as we have. And we are on target to draw down all of our Rural Development Programme money. There's no doubt about that. And it isn't in the Department's interest. But I've seen a couple of cases, Deputy, down the years where people got paid and then there was a recall on money. And believe me, it's not one issue you need to be dealing with on 2 regular basis. We've seen in the last check on the digitisation where the EU were looking for 180 million back. And that's why we had to hold up on the digitisation and the parcel identification of over 90,000 parcels last year. And we got that back down to, I think, 60 million, which the Department absorbed itself rather than pass it on to individual farmers. So it isn't that simple. I wish it was, because I've seen, and I know first-hand, plenty of people who are actually outstanding waiting for their money. But they can be reassured that everything is being done, and I'm constantly in my department across the corridor in touch with people who are upstairs. There's a whole office dedicated to this no resource issue, and they're going through them. And I think if you were over there and seen the officials who are working as studiously and as efficiently, as diligently as they can, you would see it from a different light. Thank you.
No, sorry, discussion is over. We have to move. That the rules.